All right, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this virtual event organized by the UNFCCC Secretariat in partnership with the UNEP-DTU partnership and UNEP and UNDP. My name is Miriam Nostroza. I'm with the Energy and Climate branch of the Economy Division in UNEP. And I will be with you during these 2 hours, hopefully, moderating this excellent and opportune webinar on NDC enhancement, lessons learned in capacity needs, challenges, and opportunities. So this webinar is part of a series of events on capacity building momentum to recover better that are being organized by the Paris Committee on Capacity Building and Network. As you know, the PCCB is, in my view, doing a great job on advancing with their mandates to address current and emerging gaps and needs in capacity building in developing countries. So in a few minutes, we will be hearing welcoming remarks by Marcena Chodor, the PCCB co-chair. So the process of enhancing NDCs in developing countries, we know all that is being challenged by the COVID-19 pandemic, where capacity and resource availability have affected in different ways and degrees the readiness of countries to submit their enhanced NDCs by the end of this year. So in this webinar, we will explore how countries have enhanced their NDCs and what capacities they needed, what capacities they were able to build and enhance and even maybe sustain or having plans to sustain. We will look at experiences from various countries and stakeholders, hopefully working on the ground, and hear what were the capacity challenges faced by countries, what were the opportunities and lessons learned to ensure sustainability over time of the gained capacity. So our discussions will be going on around, again, capacities countries needed to revise and enhance their NDCs. What was the support they have received? Was that enough? Are there persisting gaps? And so on, and also what type of support is still needed to ensure sufficient capacities in the countries from the time they started with the processes of implementing or revising NDCs. More importantly, I think it is what lessons they have learned and they can, or countries can capitalize on for the next process for revision of NDCs. You know, this is the other round. We will start soon after after 2023, even when the first stocktake will take place. So something around the partners organizing this interesting webinar. You know, the UNEP-DTU partnership is a collaborating center to UNEP and is a leading international research advisory institution on energy, climate, and sustainable development. Fatima and I are located in the UNEP-DTU partnership, and we are based here in Copenhagen, and we are very happy to be part of this event, particularly myself, and thank you, by the way, for inviting me to moderate this session. So the UNEP-DTU partnership and UNEP are jointly working in several capacity building initiatives and support programs, technical support programs for NDC and also for transparency. And I don't want to make marketing here, but some of you know and are participating of the projects of UNEP and UNDTU partnership. One, the other project maybe I should be mentioning here because it's a sponsor for the event is the Global Support Program, which is advising countries on also getting ready for the BTRs. I hope everyone is familiar with the acronyms here, but that's the biannual transparency reports that needs to be submitted after 2024. And UNDP, our other partner, I don't need to say much about UNDP. You all know the agency. I just want to highlight that they are working with 115 countries on enhancing and reviewing their NDCs through the Climate Promise Initiative, of which we will hear more details in a few minutes. It's a very interesting initiative. We've been collaborating with UNDP as well, similarly to other UN agencies, and they are doing tremendous work on helping countries on this process. So before I give the word to Marcena for kind, welcoming words, I would like to remind to please keep your camera off and your microphone muted to avoid background noise. So at this point, let me invite Marcena Chodor, who is the co-chair of the Paris Committee on Capacity Building. She has extensive years of experience in international climate negotiations, and also she's, let's say, promoter and defender of capacity building, and she's doing a great job together with the team on the PCCB. So please, Marcena, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Miriam, for your kind words. I would like to welcome all of you, colleagues. Good afternoon and good morning to everyone. And I'm really happy to see that there are so many people, at least from what I see on my screen, participating in this event. As you know, 2020 is a really important defining moment for the implementation of our Paris Agreement, because countries were actually urged to submit their enhanced or updated nationally determined contributions to the Paris Agreement by the end of the year. And this call was already embedded in decision of COP21, and it was reiterated last year in Madrid. And I hope that despite all these limitations and impacts which are imposed by the current pandemic, and as emphasized by the Secretary of the UNFCCC, Patricia Espinosa, this year will be the year of ambition and implementation. And for the PCCB, it is a very important topic because in the first period of the PCCB existence, we were focusing on identifying gaps and needs for the implementation of the nationally determined contributions. And we are going to continue to address current and emerging gaps and needs in implementing and further enhancing capacity building in developing countries. And today, with the leadership of our members in the PCCB network, UNEP-DTU partnership and the UNDP colleagues, we will have a chance to look at lessons learned around capacity needs, challenges and opportunities by countries that were evolved in the course of the NDC enhancement process. I hope we will have a better understanding with discussions like these of capacity needs and learn about approaches, innovations and solutions utilized by countries to address these needs. And we will also take a look at what could be done to ensure capacities built will be retained, and particularly how to ensure developing countries have access to support their need for effective implementation of the climate pledges and the way forward. I would like to express on behalf of the PCCB our appreciation to the lead partners of this event, to the distinguished party representatives who accepted invitation and agreed to share their experience with us, and of course to all of you who joined us to discuss this important topic. Before I finish, I would like to invite everyone present here to join us next Wednesday for a capacity building session during the climate dialogues, which will be led by the PCCB. And information on this event will be already is available in the chat. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to listening and participating in the discussions.
Thank you very much, Marcena, for those kind welcoming words. it's motivating to hear the tremendous work that you're doing. Again, we follow very much the PCCV work, and even because we are part of the network, and we are happy to hear that there is progress and plans to continue supporting countries on that in the world. So the next session to move on is on setting the scene, which means that we will be looking at what it means in real terms, capacities to be able to implement NDCs. So I think Fatima will guide us through an analysis of the submitted NDCs, how they have been enhanced, and capacity needs I identified. Fatima Sara is Senior Advisor at UNEP-DTU Partnership. She works on an array of climate issues and focuses on supporting countries on their transparency efforts, NDC development, implementation, and financing. And before I give the word to Fatima, let me just go back again on what we mean by capacity building. You know, many of us probably are very familiar with the terminology. Many times we speak about capacity building, other times about development, and experts will say one thing is one thing and the other is the other thing. So just to remind us what we mean by that is we have tried to define in UNEP and UNEP-DTU partnership, because we are providing or working with this with countries for a long time, and we can come with a definition, and it says like, what is it? It's capacity building. And the notion of it is, we understand it as actions conducting towards enhancing abilities, relationships, and values to enable organizations, groups, and individuals to improve their performance and achieve their objectives, right? Therefore, our initiatives are designed to initiating and sustaining a process of change, both at individual, organizational levels within a state, civil society, or the private sector, as well as a change in process and behavior that enhance cooperation between different groups and society. So from that, what I wanted you to see is that all the capacities, all the knowledge that needs to be created in the countries. So Fatima is going to tour us in this analysis what else is based on that definition, what is, how countries are developing those capacities or are building those capacities. So Fatima, with no more words. Are you there? Fatima, the floor is yours. You're muted, Fatima.
Sorry, I'm trying to share my screen. Can you see it? Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see the screen.
Okay. Good. So good afternoon, colleagues, or good morning, wherever you are, and welcome to this event. It's my pleasure to be with you here today and walk you through the enhanced submitted NDCs, and to see how they have been enhanced, and also, and more importantly, what are the capacity needs for implementations that have been flagged in these NDCs, to see how the countries are approaching the capacity building needs in this round of NDCs. But first, so that we are all in the same page, I know that most of you are very versed in the Paris Agreement and the NDCs, but just so that we are in the same page, I have put a slide about definition of NDCs that are nationally determined contribution, and that and there are actions that parties to the Paris Agreement plan to undertake to address climate change. So the parties' contributions are, of course, nationally determined and mainly based on their national circumstances and priorities. These NDCs are the global response to the climate change, and the parties are asked to undertake and communicate ambitious efforts as determined in Article 4. So these efforts can be related to, has to be related to mitigation, and can also be related to adaptation, finance, technology development and transfer, capacity building, and transparency. And the aim of all this is to achieve the purpose of the Paris Agreement, which is to limit warming to well below 2 degrees and pursue efforts to limit warming to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels, and also to enhance adaptation and climate resilience and make financial flows consistent with the pathway towards low emissions and climate resilient development. Here I would like to speak a little bit about the cycle of NDCs. So according to Article 4.2 of the Paris Agreement, the parties have to develop and communicate NDCs to the UNFCCC every 5 years. They may adjust their existing NDCs obviously at any time to enhance the level of ambition, but there would be no, there should be no backsliding. Each NDC shall represent a progression beyond the previous one and reflect the highest possible ambition. And these NDCs should also reflect common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capacities in the light of the different national circumstances. So once these NDCs are developed and communicated to the UNFCCC, the countries are then required to implement them and monitor their implementation at the national level. So this implementation is then reported to the UNFCCC through the enhanced transparency framework for an international expert review. So now in the new enhanced transparency framework, this reporting would be done mainly through the biennial transparency reports. So once that's done, every 5 years, global stock takes place, and the global progress towards achieving the goal of the Paris Agreement is evaluated. So here, the idea is not to assess the progress of each country, but to assess the global progress towards the achievement of the Paris Agreement purpose that we have talked about earlier. And then use this information from the global stocktake in the next round of NDCs, mainly to enhance ambition. So this is the cycle of NDCs in general. So the cycle of NDCs that are to be submitted in 2020. So we had some timelines before COVID, and now we are in the COVID world, and things have changed. So initially, the enhanced NDCs, the new or updated NDCs, had to be submitted by February 2020, and UNFCCC was to prepare a synthesis report to see the aggregate effects of NDCs. And then from 22 to 23, a 3-phase global stocktake was to take place. And then in February, March 2025, submission of a new round of NDCs. However, because of the COVID situation and the postponement of the COP to November 2021, there is a new deadline of February 2021, because according to the agreement, the NDCs should be submitted 9 to 12 months before the COP. So then parties, however, were encouraged to submit new or updated NDCs by the end of this year. So there was a communication from the bureau, the COP bureau. I'm not so sure, but there was a communication to this effect with these timelines. Then the Secretariat, based on the submissions that were received until 31st of December 2020, will prepare an initial version of the synthesis report by the 28th of February 2021. The rest of the timelines that I have mentioned before, which are the three phases of the global stocktake and the submission of a new NDC round, remain unchanged. So it is now just the change with regard to the submissions of the new or updated NDCs that is affected during this year 20 and 2021. But why are we talking about NDCs and the new submissions? Why do countries need to submit new or updated NDCs, and what are these NDCs? So first, countries need to submit new NDCs to raise ambition. The emission gap is so critical that even if the current NDCs are fully implemented, the remaining carbon budget for the 1.5 target will be depleted as early as 2030, and 80% depleted for the 2-degree goals, also by 2030. So the situation is quite dire, and if the emission gap is not closed by then, it will therefore become extremely unlikely that even the well below 2 degrees goal can be achieved. So it is then crucial that NDCs are updated and ambition is raised in these NDCs to be able to achieve the purpose of the Paris Agreement. So this is one of the main reasons to update NDCs. The second reason is that because there was no guidance with regard to NDCs timeframes, parties have submitted various timeframes, and now there is a situation where there is some NDCs that have timeframes to up to 2025, and these NDCs have to be parties who have such kind of NDCs have to communicate new ones by 2020, and the new NDC must present progression from the previous one. Parties who have timeframes to 2030 can also communicate updated NDCs, raising ambition with the purpose of raising ambition. So there is now parties are discussing guidance with regard to common time frame, and there is no agreement to date. However, the idea is that all NDCs from 2031 shall have a common time frame. So an agreement will be reached well before then. So according to a UNDP report from 2019 that has looked at the countries, it was a survey for countries to see what were their plans with the enhanced NDCs. So it has found that at least 112 countries, developing countries, representing 53% of global GHG emissions, have signaled that they intend to enhance their NDC by 2020, and among those, more than 40 LDCs and SIDS have indicated to submit more ambitious NDCs. And a further 37 countries, representing 16% of the global emissions, have announced also their intention to update their NDCs with new data, information, or assumptions. So then what is the situation right now? So this data that I will be presenting now are coming from the NDC registry and also from the Climate Watch website. So we have found that for now, 15 countries have submitted new or enhanced NDCs. So 2 parties, which are Suriname and Marshall Islands, have submitted second NDCs, and the 13 other parties have submitted updated first NDCs. And there is also 2 countries, which are Kyrgyzstan and Lebanon, who have recently submitted their first NDC. So in this analysis, we will look only at the updated NDCs, so the enhanced NDCs updated or second NDCs. So among these 15 countries that have then submitted the enhanced NDCs, 11 of them are developing countries and 4 are SIDS. So we can see that developing countries are taking the lead in terms of submitting updated or enhanced NDCs and in trying to raise to the climate challenge. But first, we will be using the term NDC enhancement quite a lot here. So I just wanted to explain that. So we are also, again, in the same page. So this process of NDC enhancement refers to the process of developing new or updated NDCs. They are considered enhanced when they contain improvements to their mitigation, adaptation, or transparency and communication components in accordance with the Paris implementation guidelines. So this is the definition that we have used there. And then I will walk you now through how parties have actually enhanced their NDCs. So we can see here from the graphs that in terms of strengthening or adding a new GHG target, we see that most countries have done so. So I think it's 8 countries have done so, and 3 not, which are Cuba, Suriname, and Thailand. And in terms of strengthening or adding policies and actions, so most countries, if not all, apart from the Marshall Islands, have added this component of new policies or actions. Then there is also, in terms of strengthening sectoral targets, we see that most countries, 7 countries out of the 11 that we are analyzing here, have strengthened also their sectoral targets. And most countries, apart from Jamaica and the Marshall Islands, have strengthened the adaptation component in their NDC. Then we move to the climate neutrality target. So we see here that the Marshall Islands and Chile have committed actually to climate neutrality by 2050, which is very encouraging. And a lot of countries are starting to move to economy-wide targets. So here we note that Chile, Marshall Islands, Moldova, Singapore, Thailand, Vietnam have moved to economy-wide targets, but we would like to note that the Marshall Islands and Thailand exclude LULUCF from this economy-wide targets. Then in terms of the conditionality of NDCs, we see that most countries, which is not very surprising, has a conditional target, and it's only Chile and Singapore that have no conditional targets. We have the case actually of I think it's the Marshall Islands, who has not specified the conditionality, but specifically, but at the end they say that achievement of the NDC is dependent of the provision of support. So I would say that it means that it's a conditional NDC. But we have seen that we have 2 countries that have moved from conditional to unconditional NDCs. But it is also to be noted that most countries that have conditional targets, they condition this target by provision of support, capacity building, finance, and technology transfer. So here as well, we can see the importance of the capacity building elements, given that the share of lion in the NDCs that have been submitted are conditional. So it is very important to get the capacity building component right for a good implementation of these NDCs. So we looked also at the countries that have submitted, that have enhanced their NDCs in terms of transparency, so in terms of inclusion of elements of the ICTU, so information for clarity, transparency, and understanding. And we see here as well that most countries have improved their NDCs in that regard. So we note as well that parties were encouraged actually to use the ICTU guidance that have been agreed in Katowice in this round of new or updated NDCs. It is not mandatory for now, but parties have been strongly encouraged to use it. So some of them have tried to use it, but we can see as well that it is still a long way to be in complete compliance with the new ICTU guidance. So there is a lot of efforts that needs to be done in that regard as well. So we reach now the main topic, the capacity building needed to implement the NDCs. So we see here that almost all countries, apart from the Marshall Islands and Singapore, have mentioned that they need capacity building and support to implement their NDCs. So it is really a very important element in the implementation of NDCs again here. Keeping in mind as well that the NDCs, most NDCs are conditional and are also conditional by provision of capacity building. So in terms of what capacity building is needed, so we have looked at the NDCs themselves. And it was quite a bit surprising to see that not that much elaboration of the needs is present in the NDCs, but through looking at what has been submitted, even though it's not very detailed, we could come up with some main topics that most countries or many countries have expressed need to have capacity building on. And these elements are as follows. So first, one of the main areas are strengthening the sectoral, national, and subnational capacities. So many countries have mentioned that, and they have specified which sectors, because now the NDCs are, they specify which sectors are have priority in their NDCs, and for these sectors, they need more capacity building for the sectoral actors and the national actors that are working for these specific sectors. The other topic that has come up is the integrating of mitigation and adaptation in sectoral planning policies and processes. So that is an element that a few countries, I think like around probably 5 or 6 countries have expressed this need. So I think this is kind of an important element for these countries to be able to integrate the mitigation and adaptation elements in their planning processes. The third most cited topic is mainstreaming climate change and raising awareness among local actors, communities, and the private sector in view of transforming behaviors and mindsets. So now most countries are aware that climate change is not a top-down approach, but it needs also to be a bottom-up, and they want to raise awareness of really the public and the local actors that can influence people's behavior and raise awareness about climate change challenges. The other topic that that we could see in the capacity building needs is developing finance proposals. So I think, and we have noticed that also from our experience working with the developing countries. So this is an element that many countries actually need capacity building in, and it makes sense to have it here. And the other component that was also quite popular is the adaptation, including capacity building for adaptation, including support for NAP development and decision making with regard to the actions to be undertaken, impact assessment, risk and disaster forecasting. So these were elements that have been cited by many countries. So there is quite a need in terms of capacity building for adaptation and resilience. The other topic is the development, is capacity building on development of coordination mechanisms, legislations, policies, and action plans. And then also, and that was interesting, so many countries are now aware that to ensure sustainability, there is a need to strengthen the national ownership of the capacity building initiatives, so and also improve the research capacity in climate change, so that they are not dependent all the time on international organizations. So there is a need that countries have expressed this need that they need more support to be able to have a complete ownership of their capacity building and have sustainable processes going forward. And the other need that has been noted also is the assistance in the development of information systems for various areas for the tracking of implementation of NDCs or the data relevant to climate change and so on. So these were mainly the topics that we could extract from the submitted NDCs. And but based on that, and from what we have actually noticed, I think we would need areas, some further areas of capacity needs, include actually helping countries include the components of the ICTU in their new NDCs, and also developing enhanced transparency systems for in the countries. So that was apparent from many NDCs that countries have that need, and also because, as I have mentioned before, countries have not really specified in a very detailed way their capacity needs. So we think that probably there might be a need to assist countries in identifying their capacity needs, because sometimes, and that has been something that we have noticed from our experience developing with many countries, working with many countries, countries have just some of them have some personnel have a rough idea of what they need, but it's not really very well identified and specified, so it can come up to some concrete actions. So I think there might be a need to build capacity with that aspect as well, to ensure sustainability in the future. So that would be the final aim. So we have also looked in the submitted NDCs at the barriers that that countries have identified. And as you can see, the financial resources and capacity building have the lion's share of citations in there. So that shows really how important the capacity building element is for the successful implementation of the NDCs going forward. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. And it would be my pleasure to reply to any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fatima, for that excellent presentation. I think it was very clear and set the scene with regards to what really needs to be done in countries in order to make them ready in terms of capacities for them to fully implement the NDCs. I'm going to jump directly to the questions before giving the floor to Natalia. I think these are interesting questions, and I was myself curious about the second NDC. So what does that mean? Is it that is the same NDC that has been presented again? So councillors, like as a second, that's one question. And comes from Penny Gazella from South Africa. The other question, it comes from Walter Ubal. Would you mind explicitly the term wide economic target or economy-wide target? There was a question also from one of our colleagues here with regards to, don't countries also need capacities to assess their needs on capacity building? So if we do work on that, I think that someone also asked about Musuni actually asked about the climate neutrality. Fortunately, Marcena helped us answer that question already, so you don't need to worry about it. Or if the time allows, we can also comment on that. So I think these are the main questions coming through the chat, and please. The floor is yours again.
Thank you, Miriam, and thank you for the questions. So yeah, the first question was related to the second NDC. I think these second NDCs are for countries that have submitted. Just let me reshare my presentation again. Yes, as you can see here, there are two categories of countries that need to submit NDCs. So this category with the time frame until 2030, so they submit updated NDC. But for countries who have time frames, NDCs with time frames until 2025, then they submit new NDCs. That's why they are called second NDCs, because the first NDC with the time frame until 2021 is considered as the first NDC. And these countries that are in this situation, as it is a second NDC, they have they must, it's an obligation for them that the new NDC has a progression, is a progression from the previous one. So I hope that clarifies. Economy-wide targets. With the Paris Agreement, there is a kind of a distinction between, I mean, what we used to call Annex 1 and non-Annex 1. It is not the case anymore, but nevertheless, developed countries have the obligation to submit NDCs that have economy-wide targets. So the NDCs have to include all sectors of the economy. So that's why we call it economy-wide targets. So all the economy of a country should be included in all the sectors of the economy of the country should be included in NDC and have targets, reduction targets. For developing countries, the aim is that they start somewhere with the objective of moving towards economy-wide targets. So they can choose initially the sectors that they would like to include in their NDC and then expand that as their capacity evolves. So I hope that is clear. The third question was whether countries need to have a capacity building to be able to assess capacity. That's also one of the points that I have raised at the end, because we have, as I mentioned, noticed that many countries were not very detailed in expressing their capacity needs. So that could mean a lot of things, but one of the possibilities is that some countries need assistance in identifying the capacity needs. So to make the process sustainable, there might be a need to assist or to build capacities of these countries in ways on how they can assess and identify their capacity needs. The floor is back to you, Miriam. I think I have covered all the questions.
Yes, Fatima, thank you very much. And other interesting questions and comments are arising in the chat box, but I think I will just keep moving because most of the questions probably will be answered throughout the flow of the event. Most of them are with regards to processes, how to build capacities on seats, how to engage other stakeholders beyond the usual suspects in countries, going from financial institutions, industry, and so on. And I will keep track of the questions. There are many thank yous to your presentation, and I will just summarize the comments so we address them in the next sessions. I think when we go to the country experiences, many of these questions will be addressed. If not, we come back to discuss the issues. So with no further delay, I would like to invite now Natalia Vasilieva from UNDP.
Yeah.
Sorry, Natalia. So she's from UNDP. She is a regional consultant that supports the global UNDP Climate Promise Initiative in 17 countries of the region of Eastern Europe and CIS. Natalia will present the UNDP experience in supporting countries with their NDC enhancement challenges and the lessons learned, and probably she will also walk us through how they've been addressing these issues of capacity building in the climate promise. So Natalia, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Miriam. I will relate a lot in my presentation to what Fatima presented as well, which is, I think, how it's meant to be. So it's a great, warm greetings from Glasgow to you, waiting all of you in the next year, next year time. I'm glad to present the UNDP Climate Promise Initiative here. It's a great honor and pleasure. I would like to say that the UNDP Climate Promise Initiative is of the global scale. It was launched in 2019, and its initial objective was to support at least 100 countries in enhancement of their NDCs by 2020, with demonstrated increase in ambition. So obviously, as the Paris Agreement requested the countries to develop and submit the next generation of their NDCs by 2020, to advance global efforts and avoid rise of the planet temperature, UNDP decided to contribute to solving this global challenge. But as well, the 2020 became a year which presented not only global climate crisis, but as well another global crisis, which is COVID-19. So the countries had to provide a quick reaction to manage the COVID crisis as well. And as well, they had to think mid and long term and create the plans of recovery. This is why it becomes so important to leverage the climate promise and NDC processes. Right now, there is a window of opportunity to align and integrate NDC measures with COVID-19 recovery plans around the globe to enable transition to green and resilient recovery of the global economy. So UNDP is really well prepared to support the NDC enhancement process because of a number of factors such as its 3 billion worth climate portfolio in grant financing, which covers more than 140 countries. As well, its global policy network presents versatile expertise in governance, health, youth empowerment, gender equality, disaster risk reduction, and other. Its established track record of supporting governments on NDC design and implementation since 2013, including in collaboration with the NDC partnership. And also in collaboration with multiple partners, UNDP developed a number of guidance and tools on NDC preparation, covering different aspects such as NDC and youth, NDC and gender, SDG and NDC linkages, nature-based solutions and NDC, and as well, for example, investment and financial flows assessment. UNDP learns not only on key success factors, but as well on bottlenecks to NDC implementation and how to speedily address those risks and bottlenecks, and thus to raise the ambition of the NDCs in the end. It wouldn't be impossible if UNDP did not collaborate with a number of partners. So Climate Promise is delivered in collaboration with 25 key strategic partners, and they cover other UN agencies, including UNEP, UNFCCC, FAO, as well as global financial institutions and funding mechanisms such as World Bank, GEF, GCF, academia, private sector, civil society, NGOs, and different foundations, including AVINA and the Heinrich Böll Foundation. Also, Climate Promise support is a contribution to the NDC Partnership Initiative via the Climate Action Enhancement Package. So together with World Resource Institute, UNDP developed a guidance on enhancing NDCs in 2019. And you can find this guide online, but in a brief, it covers different aspects such as raising mitigation ambition, increasing adaptation ambitions and including different aspects of it, as well as including information to enhance clarity, transparency, and understanding, or ICTU. Additionally, it reflects on aligning NDCs with the Sustainable Development Goals and on the role of finance in NDC enhancement. Multiple countries used this guide to initiate their work on NDCs. In 2019, UNDP conducted the largest survey of its kind with more than 130 countries, asking them about their plans and status with revision and implementation of NDCs in 2020, as well as critical bottlenecks and success factors they envisaged. So in 2020, all Climate Promise countries have developed and endorsed their Climate Promise work plans, and implementation of the work at the national level is aligned with the work of the partners I have mentioned earlier. And as well, we regularly track against the work plans, the work which is being done. So this approach allows us to match needs on the ground with the global support. So coming closer to the support provided by the UNDP in enhancement of NDCs, it's delivered through 5 so-called service lines. The first one is building of political will and societal ownership at national and subnational level. Then review, alignment, and update of existing targets, policies, and measures. The third one is incorporating new sectors and greenhouse gases. The fourth one is assessment of costs and investment opportunities. And the fifth one is monitoring the progress and strengthening transparency. So now I will go in a bit more details on each of these service lines. So the first one is building of political will and societal ownership at national and subnational levels. And that covers engagement of key ministries and subnational authorities to coordinate and harmonize inputs, which means that the approach should be whole of government involved in consultation on NDC targets. This way, it makes them more, it makes more aware all government authorities, and as well makes targets widely spread, like widely known for each of the authorities. As well, it's assessing of institutional capacity building needs at the national and subnational levels that will help to ensure a strong foundation for NDC vision and implementation. That includes as well raising awareness. Engaging multiple stakeholders for broad ownership of an NDC, and that covers youth and women. Coming to the second service line, which is review, align, and update existing targets, policies, and measures. It's like the following step, because we do compare the current NDC against the national strategies and plans, national communications, national adaptation mitigation strategies, disaster risk reduction strategies, the Kigali Amendment to the Kyoto Protocol, among other. And as well, it comes to aligning NDC action with the Sustainable Development Goals to find both synergies and potential trade-offs. Also, it includes more robust data and information. So talking about raising ambition, we cannot not mention incorporating new sectors and greenhouse gases. And when we talk about this, it means that we need to identify and assess missing sectors and gases in comparing to the previous generation of NDCs. As well, it comes to activities related to sectors in which the existing UNDP project portfolio can be used to support inclusion of additional sectors and gases, and that will enable so-called quick wins. And that covers like nature-based solutions, integration of SLCPs, national adaptation plans, and national DRR strategies. But development of the NDCs, that's a challenge, but the following challenge will be its implementation, and it will not be possible without cost and investment opportunities assessment. So this service line includes activities related to estimation of costs of priority actions from developed national and international existing analysis. As well, it covers demonstration of opportunities for private investment in NDC actions and measures to enable or de-risk investment to increase role of the private investment, because obviously NDC cannot be implemented only with support of the public funding. We need to blend and increase participation of the private sector actors. Pardon me, and as well, it covers support in preparation of NDC finance strategy, which is really like a new step. And the last one, the last service line is implementation. Well, implementation of NDCs could not be done if we cannot monitor its progress and strengthen the transparency of the information. This is why UNDP supports the countries in providing technical guidance on implications of methodological and accounting processes, but as well it conducts CTU quality assurance review and suggests recommendations on its improvement. So in UNDP, we do have a so-called climate promise dashboard, which is a real-time tracking tool. And if we look at it, we can see here that countries are divided in regions and sub-regions. We can see how many countries are involved in climate promise, how many countries of those are from least developed countries, and how many countries are from the small island developing countries. As well, we have at the moment 14 high emitters. We can see as well indicative funding and sectoral references and cross-sectoral references across all these countries which participate in climate promise. And we can see the number of partners, like in this instance, we can see them globally. And as well, we can see implementation milestones for each country. So what is the progress of each country right now? Also talking about the service lines, which I presented earlier, we can see how many countries are involved or involve UNDP in support across these service lines. So the first one covers 103 countries. The second one is 104, covering new sectors and new greenhouse gases is 86. Then followingly, 96 and 89 coming to finance support, finance assessment support, and as well MRV support. So as of now, Climate Promise is supporting not 100 countries, but 115 governments. And it's something to be proud of. And implementation of NDC enhancement is underway in 113 countries. In Eastern Europe and Central Asia, there are 17 countries which are supported by the Climate Promise. And as well, Moldova submitted its second NDC in March 2020 with an enhanced mitigation ambition and adaptation components. Globally, 51% of all Climate Promise countries still intend to submit NDCs by the end of 2020. And 45 countries will submit ahead of COP26 in November 2021. Hopefully, the majority could submit the NDCs by February 2021. 56% of Climate Promise countries intend to raise mitigation ambition, and an additional 38% are still unclear, which means that UNDP can support these countries toward greater ambition. 92% of Climate Promise countries intend to raise adaptation ambitions, which is really something impressive. As well, talking about the support architecture and funding in Eastern Europe and Central Asia, which is a very complex system, I would focus on institutional setup, which means that we've got teams across the globe coming from people from the headquarters of UNDP, Istanbul Regional Hub, country offices, and together they form global policy network. As well, it comes to UNDP core funding, over $2 million, bilateral funds with the European Commission, coming to EU for Climate project, bilateral funds with Italy and SIDA. As well, we've got a signed memorandum of understanding with IRENA in technical assistance related to renewable energy aspects. National level climate change mitigation adaptation portfolios are as well a part of the Climate Promise. As I mentioned, as well, NDC Global Support Program, Jeff's program on capacity building for enhanced transparency, NEP Global Support Program, as well, NEP support in GCF readiness and synergies with NDC partnership and PEP, and technical guidance and tools. So talking about technical guidance and tools, we do have many resources to share knowledge. One of them is UNDP Climate Promise webpage, which is being updated regularly so that everyone could see the progress of NDC enhancement. As well, we do have the guide which I talked about earlier, which was developed together with World Resources Institute. Also, in collaboration with UNEP-DTU, UNDP developed a so-called NDC quality checklist, which outlines 3 dimensions: country ownership and inclusiveness, robustness and ambition, and feasibility. So that are considered essential for robust and ambitious NDCs. So basically, this checklist helps countries to look through and to see whether all aspects are covered in their NDCs or whether there is some more room and some opportunities for development of NDCs. As well, we do have a guidance note related to green recovery and a joint UNDP UNEP service offer on circular economy. Also, we have a number of thematic briefs which are available at the resource portal, and they cover different aspects coming from adaptation, DRR, energy, youth empowerment, gender, health, forests, MRV, finance, and other aspects. Obviously, COVID-19 pandemic impacted like every aspect of the life of probably every person on the globe. So almost 1/3 of the countries reported on concrete ways that they're linking the climate promise support to COVID-19 response and recovery efforts. And this is the opportunity which I have mentioned earlier on combining climate and green recovery. So UNDP launched the guidance note to support integration of the COVID recovery with NDC planning and climate action. And it included 5 key points. Basically, it means aligning and integrating NDC measures and strategies with COVID-19 recovery plans, aligning climate and NDC finance with recovery finance, and strengthening capacities and coordination between ministries of finance and environment. Also, it's important to enhance gender responsive and inclusive processes across the NDCs and recovery, and build national capacity and facilitate South-South collaboration. So thank you so much for your time, for your attention. I'll be happy to answer your questions. And in the end, on the final slide of the presentation, you can see contact details of my colleagues, which could provide with more information in the sectoral specific areas. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Natalia, for that very clear presentation on the Climate Promise Initiative. I know from close that you're doing a fantastic work on that. And I would like to highlight the 5 areas where you are providing support to countries on this effort, and mentioning those 5 areas because there is where we can see that the capacities are needed, and we need to build and develop capacities within those 5 areas, basically in the area of political will, society, ownership, national, subnational governments, and then going to review and aligning of the existing targets, policies, measures, going to the sectors and the gases, and then to the cost and investment opportunities. It comes as it was step by step, but actually is cross-cutting the finance aspect especially, right? So, and obviously closing the loop, let's say, with the monitoring progress and strengthening. So in each area, you can just imagine the tremendous work that countries need to do in order to develop the skills and capacities in that particular area. So thank you very much for that presentation. I didn't spot any questions to you, Natalia, but I'm sure it will come as we go. So if no questions for Natalia, I would like to continue. We are already a little bit delayed with our program. So to jump now to our distinguished panelists representing countries. This will be a roundtable, as I said, including representatives from countries. We have, thank you very much to Jamaica, Vietnam, Senegal. Unfortunately, Guatemala couldn't join, but for accepting to be part of the panel and for accepting to share your experiences and your lessons learned and your concerns even on this process. And I know everyone is currently very busy with a range of things that needs to be done in the countries, but you have made time to participate in this webinar that we are organizing through the PCCB. So our first speaker is Mr. Omar Alcock from Jamaica. He studied at the University of the West Indies in Jamaica and has a very interesting trajectory after his education as a Master of Science in Economics. His expertise or experience ranges from financial sector, public sector, academia, and he's currently working in the in the climate change division, and he guides development, enhancement, and implementation of key sectoral modeling exercises, database development studies, and many interesting things within that and the work he's doing. So currently, Mr. Alcock, or he was actually the national technical lead for Jamaica's updated NDC submitted to the UNFCCC in June 2020. So he comes with a lot of expertise and experience, hopefully, to share with us. So with no further delay, I would like to invite Omar to give us his impressions with regards to these questions that organizers have put forward for him to share the experiences of Jamaica. Please, Omar, the floor is yours. Your microphone maybe is still off. We can see Omar's sharing. He's sharing.
Yeah,
oh, there you go.
There is all that problem. All right. Apologies for that. Thank you to the PCCB network team for giving Jamaica the opportunity to share this morning, this afternoon, this evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you to the participants for wanting to be involved. As Miriam said, I am Omar Alcock and I'm the Senior Technical Officer responsible for mitigation in the Climate Change Division here in Jamaica. Just going to share some experiences based on some questions that were posed to us, the panelists, via our PowerPoint presentation. So in order for persons to appreciate the responses that will be given to the questions that were posed, one of the first things that I intend to do is just give a very quick update on what our national mandate is and how we intend to implement that mandate. And of course, at the end, after answering the questions, give persons an idea of how this updated NDC is perceived and looks. That was submitted in June to the UNEP-DTU. All right, the phone is not going to stop. Give me 1 minute. All right, sorry about that. Right, so in carrying out the climate change agenda, there are several things that we have been considering. Firstly, looking at the global picture, of course, it's the UNEP-DTU and its framework that has been designed there, the climate change framework, and primarily the Paris Agreement and what the articles are indicating and have stated in the agreement for us to follow, to be able to reduce emissions and to keep temperatures below certain degrees by now and mid-century. And critical or key to that, of course, is the development of countries' commitment to reduce those GHG emissions through their NDCs. We also have a national development plan that we have termed Vision 2030, and that also has elements in it related to climate change, and this is our overarching policy direction for Jamaica. And so everything that we do has to feed up into this Vision 2030. And one of those things that feeds into it is our climate change policy framework, which identifies all the activities, plans, strategies that needs to be done to carry out the agenda. There are several studies as well that have been completed, and as mentioned two here quickly, that's the State of the Jamaica Climate Report, which is now being updated from 2015 to 2019. And there's also our third national communication, which was submitted last year, I believe, along with our second biannual update report. We're now in the process of updating these documents. And so when we talk about implementation for us, the two main areas are adaptation and mitigation. And I don't think I need to go very deep into those. And then from those, there are a number of cross-cutting elements or issues, whether it's RED+, strategic frameworks that need to be developed, as transparency framework, and so on, gender issues. And some of those are embedded in projects and programs and activities based on finance. We have several GCF readiness programs that we are currently implementing. Technology, our relationship with the CTCN, and of course, the key moment we're talking about here today, which is capacity building. And so we were able to produce an INDC and submit in 2015. We then were able to commit to the Paris Agreement and ratify it. And following that, our INDC became our first NDC. Since then, we have been committed to developing revised or updated versions of that every 5 years. And that I believe, we have successfully done this year. And so the question is, what were the capacity needs and gaps that Jamaica met upon in being able to update its NDC, and what kind of support was received to that extent? And so for us, and probably for most persons that are on this call, being able to have all the technical persons available to you to do the necessary analysis, to do the modeling that is required, was not readily available to us. And even though we have technical staff in-house, the time required to actually do the analysis work, we did not have, because there are other job functions and areas that we also have to pay attention to. We also were not privy, or did not have available to us the necessary tools and software to be able to conduct those analysis and modeling. So for instance, the LEAP model or the LEAP tool wasn't readily available to us. And even if it was, we would then have to receive training on how to use it and how to use it effectively to produce the updated results for our NDC. In addition to that, one of the things that we stuck to was using the IPCC methodology. And that methodology is not very well known among a lot of the sector experts here. And so that also was a capacity gap for us. As with most persons, the fiscal constraint is significant. There was no dedicated budgetary space for us to actually conduct the work. So even if we wanted to hire consultants or to have consultancies involved, we would not have been able, through our national budget, to pay for such instances. And that's really because it's not, the process currently is not institutionalized to be able to update and revise our NDC. As a result, we had discussions with the NDC partnership. We became a member of the partnership in August 2018. And through discussions with them and one of their partner entities, which is the World Bank Group, we were able to secure financing and technical assistance to produce studies, assessments, analysis, which then fed into us completing the NDC using the ICTU guidance template. Now the next question, what support or way of support Jamaica would have liked to have? I think that's an endless list. What I was able to successfully identify 2 key areas. One, due to the pandemic, we weren't able to have the level of face-to-face that we would have liked. We did have consultations with our sector experts, but not in the way that we would have preferred. Our preference is to have the sit down and have the discussion and to visit the offices and have that kind of experience between the technical staff in the sector and the technical staff in the climate change division with the consultants. We had to do that virtually. So even though there was that kind of hindrance, we were able to overcome it by the fact that we were able to use the technology that was available to us to have that kind of discussion. We also have a prototype GHG inventory database installed, not yet readily available widely. And I think that also prevented us from doing some of the work in-house that we would have liked to do. And that's a situation, however, we're looking to change with upcoming projects. One of them being the update, the production of our 4th national communication and our CBIT project. And both will be working in tandem to try to see how best we can have our database up and running for upcoming projects and programs that require GHG inventories and the data from those. So what lessons Jamaica has learned can capitalize on for the next process? For me personally, timing is everything. I think we started a bit late. even though we were successful in completing within a reasonable time, I think. I would have really loved to not have been felt so pressured. And hence, I think if we had planned earlier, we would have gotten probably a little bit more in terms of the work from the updated NDC. As it relates to the enabling systems, I think if we had probably a roadmap or an action plan for updating the NDC, I think that would have helped as well. I was fairly new when I came on board to the Climate Change Division. And so most of this I learned from attending COP sessions and other Substan SBI sessions. And so I think if there was some process or roadmap in place to guide the development of these NDCs, I think that would have helped our process a little bit more. Of course, if we had the database I'd mentioned before, it would have made a world of difference, because some of the information would have already been ingrained in our database instead of having to go to stakeholders to collect from scratch. In addition, I think some capacity has been built with some of our sector experts. We have embedded in our project document that training will be done with our sector experts on how important the NDC is, what steps were taken to get the results that we got, training on the tools that were used as well. So we have that arrangement in place and looking forward to implementing those when the time is right. So what type of support is needed to ensure sufficient capacities have been built and retained in countries to facilitate further revision and update? Just begin back again on training. We definitely need to do more training of the sector experts. We have some initial training in the IPCC methodology, but I believe certified training in the area would assist, because we depend a great deal on the methodology in terms of ensuring that there's a proper structure in place in doing the analysis. So that's one area. Training in requirements at the global level as well, because even though I might attend these COP sessions and these negotiation sessions, the other sector experts would not have been so exposed. And so at some point in time, we have to ensure that we collaborate with them to let them know what the decisions are. We have to collaborate with them to ensure that they are aware what the expectations are, at least at the international level, to be able to complete all the requirements at that level. In terms of the institutional framework, we have the climate change framework policy, as mentioned. We're now looking to revise that policy, because that policy was what we call pre-Paris. And so we want a post-Paris policy that reflects not only a national agenda, but a regional and a global agenda to which we are trying to aspire to. And a part of getting that done effectively, I think, is having proper institutional frameworks in place, one of which being legislative support. So we're trying to see how best we can also include some kind of climate change legislation or act to have the things done. Stakeholder sensitization, I think I spoke to. Interministerial collaboration. We do have sessions from time to time with other ministries and what we call focal point members for the climate change network. And I think that has helped. And I think continuing along that line will continue to assist us in getting the necessary information and data to do the analysis that we need to do revisions in the future. Let me jump on. So our updated NDC has been submitted, was submitted in June. It focuses on 2 sectors. The previous NDC only focused on 1, and that was energy. And so we have expanded it to now include forestry and things like no net loss in forest cover and so on. And as a result, we have been able to recognize that we could possibly reduce our emission levels compared to our business as usual level by 1.8 to 2 million tons of CO2 equivalent. We were also able to identify core benefits for adaptation core benefits. So things like improved air quality, improvement in retention of soil, reduction in possibly soil erosion, and so on. We were able to identify those and I believe did document those in our submission. And the aim at the end of the day is to move towards the economy-wide NDC. As a small island developing state, it's a slow process for varying reasons, but I think we can, and we definitely are aiming to get there in the very long run. And one of those things that would help us get there is continued work with our partners. And one of the work that we're looking to finalize even before the end of summer next year is our long-term strategy, or what we have termed our pathway to 2050. Yes, so thank you. That's pretty much our experience and what we would like to share at this time.
Thank you very much, Omar. That was a brilliant presentation, very clear, and thank you very much for addressing the 4 questions that organizers posed. I think this is a very nice illustration of really what countries are doing, the tremendous work that everyone is doing, and still highlighting areas where more needs to be done in terms of developing capacity. So thank you very much for that. I would like to give the floor to participants. I didn't see questions through the chat, so maybe I just briefly open to some quick question in 1, in 2, in 3. Okay, so please think of your question and you can write directly in the chat, or we can probably have some time to interact. So I would just like now to turn to our next panelist, the distinguished Pham Van Tan from Vietnam. Mr. Pham Van Tan is the Deputy Director General in the Department of Climate Change in the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment. Pham is the Deputy Team Leader for the development of Vietnam's INDC and Vietnam's updated NDC. So he is very much into the whole process, and this is interesting because we keep, right, the capacity, we make it sustainable. So he's also one of the key persons for formulation and leading the implementation of many important policies in Vietnam, such as climate change strategy, plan and implementation of the Paris Agreement. So welcome, Pham, thank you very much for being here. With no more delay, please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miriam. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our own colleagues. I would like to share with you some experiences that we face with the NDC review and update in Vietnam. As you know that we started our NDC review update quite early, since June 2017, and then we completed it in May 2020. So we started quite early, and then but also so we have advantage, but also have some limitation. If we start later, we can learn more for you. The process is quite comprehensive, so with tens of the consultative meeting, and then the wider participation of all stakeholders in Vietnam. So for the questions you raised, I would like to go directly to answer the questions. The first one relates to the needs, and if the needs are provided or not. So on this question, we can see that the capacity need, first we see the lack of information in when we do review and update. First, it is not available. Or if it's available, it was kept in different places, many places with different format. And it's quite hard for us to put all things together and then have a same thing that we can use for the process. So how we deal with this one? We call all the stakeholders in Vietnam. We organized a very big kick-off meeting and call all stakeholders in Vietnam, include international organizations in Vietnam, if they have information, if they have available research already done in Vietnam, they can provide the information to us. So it's quite good, and then we receive quite a number of information, very important information we receive from communities. The second, what we need is experts. The experts in Vietnam we have, but of course they're very costly. So they are Vietnamese, and of course we need to hire them, and then we can support from UNDP, from ZSS German, and they provide us with support, and then we can hire a good expert who can work for us. And the matter that how we can maintain this expert working along together with us, because this process, not only NDC review and updates one time, it may repeat many times in the future. So how we can maintain them working with us for long run, and how we can also train additional experts in Vietnam. So that is the question that we still working on. The third one, because we started quite early, so there's no common common format for NDC. So we have to start it quite from almost zero, started from our INDC, and then developed what NDC update of Vietnam should look like. So that's why we go with adaptation, we go with mitigation, and we go with co-benefit, and how to measure the contribution of adaptation as well as mitigation activities in Vietnam. So when we look at the own options related to mitigation as well as adaptation, what we need is the list of best practice or mitigation options available in the world. How to get that? Where? And especially the cost. Because when we provide the option for the government to decide, they must know if we shift from current option, mitigation option, to the new option, how much does it cost, how much we should pay, and then maybe that is the big question. So if you can also have the list of mitigation and adaptation options available around, and then for the country to use, I think that it's very good for us, for all. The next one, we can see that when we develop the mitigation and adaptation options, that is only the commitment we intend to do at the national level. How to translate the option there, the mitigation option and adaptation option, to the activities of provinces, of ministries, and all stakeholders in Vietnam. That is something we need to do. So to have that, we have to look at the legislation system in Vietnam. And very luckily, I also would like to inform you that yesterday, the National Assemblies of Vietnam already adopted the law on environmental protection. That includes one chapter on climate change. So all requirement of NDC implementation as well as the related Paris Agreement requirement that apply for Vietnam, we reflect in the new law. So with that one, we have the system as well as the two legal tools to encourage on on the ministry, on provinces, and then the organization in Vietnam working toward for implementing the NDC of Vietnam. So come to the second question, what's the lesson learned from whole process? Through the experience of working for INDC as well as NDC update in Vietnam, I think that the biggest lesson we learned is we should keep the ownership of ministries who are directly to fulfill the contribution, both mitigation as well as adaptation, to put in the nation to the NDC of Vietnam, because they are the one who will implement that one in the future. So if we keep the ownership, they know what they will contribute and how to do that, as well as integrate that contribution into their plan, 5-year plan, 10 years plan of the ministry. The second lesson I think is we should open the process. So widely participation of all stakeholders can provide us good inputs and good information. But sometimes, of course, widely participation of all stakeholders, they can also provide us with pressure as well. But how to balance between pressure and benefit, of course, we have to balance. But the lesson we learned that please keep the processes open, so own people can, own the group of people who interact in process can involve. For the third question, what we should prepare for the next. So after submitted our NDC, we look back and see that we should put everything, what lesson we learn, what step we do, how we process with the update NDC in one, how we say, that guidebook, because maybe sometime 5 years later, I will not be here in this place, expert will not be here, so the next group of people can look at that and learn from the process. The second one is we should strengthen the system for reinforcement of NDC implementation. So with the law on environmental protection adopted yesterday by a National Assembly, and then with a lot of the legal system we develop under that law, we will have the quite a strong system for reinforcement of NDC implementation. The next one, we should do assessment periodically to measure the achievement of sector as well as toward the target that we commit in our NDC. And the last, but most importantly, we have to set up the database for keep on information that need and then how to collect it from different areas, different sectors in Vietnam in order to keep it in the same format, in the same way that we can use in the next time. So that is my information I would like to share to you. Thank you very much for the kind attention. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Pham. That was also very interesting to see. We are witnesses that Vietnam is doing also tremendous work. We've been collaborating, but even though we are aware that those capacities that you just mentioned, even to continue the work, are still there, and we witness how you have progressed and the difficulties you've been going through, especially with the availability of data, which is actually not only a problem for Vietnam, but for many countries. So point taken. I think I'm also counting on other participants to take note on those identification of capacities is still needed in your country. I would just like to also highlight your what you said about broadening the participation, so you receive probably impulse, ideas, but more importantly, I like the idea of if you allow a wide range of participation, you receive more pressure to continue going on. So that was a very interesting point you made. So I'm keeping that lesson from you. So thank you very much for your presentation. I don't know if we have questions from the audience. I didn't see anything in the chat, but please, again, feel free to just jump in and make the question directly. In 1, in 2, in 3, no questions. So thank you very much, Pam. I think, as usual, it was clear. Our next panelist is the Pape Lamini Diouf from Senegal. I don't know if we have him in the audience. If so, please unmute your microphone and say you're there.
I think he's having connections issues. He's been in and out of the forum a few times. So yeah, I don't have him here at the moment, at least.
But there are some questions for Omar, so
okay.
I think I'm trying to find them in the chat. There was a few questions actually about the presentations and the sharing, so we will share all the presentations in the PCCB website. So I think in tomorrow probably, or by Monday, you should be able to find them in there, in the same websites. Probably if Suzanne can share the link to the website, that would be great. So we will have everything there, and in a few days also the recording of this session.
Yeah, thank you very much for that notice, Fatima. I would like to invite anyone from our audience also to share anything with regards to what capacities still need to be built, or what capacities have been built in your country in the process of enhancing or revising the NDCs. We have just had our colleague from Myanmar to volunteer, but he has to go now because it's evening in his country, in Myanmar. So we hope that he still can jump in before we close.
Mm-hmm. So while the participants are thinking about their either questions or comments on this aspect, there was a question to Omar and to FAM. How did you mobilize a political buy-in? So if you could please address that.
Sure.
Omar first. Go ahead, Omar.
Okay, sure. So for us, it wasn't so difficult, and I'll explain why. The climate change division at the time rested or was hosted in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, which was headed by the Prime Minister himself. Persons may be or may not be aware, the Prime Minister also co-leads on the climate finance track with the Emir of Qatar and President Macron from France. So climate change is at the top of his agenda. That's one. Before submission to the UNFCCC, we actually brought our NDC to Cabinet requesting permission for submission. And that was done to garner the support from the Cabinet, our members of Parliament and ministers from various sectoral portfolios, and to also make them aware that this thing exists and what the commitments are that the nation is putting to the international community. And so even before we submitted, we got that permission and that buy-in, which was wonderful for us. And that's really how we worked our political buy-in, if you want to call it that.
Thank you, Omar. Fam, you have anything to add to, or? Fam? Yeah, we know it's evening or late evening or early evening in Vietnam and the region, so we just maybe wait. While we wait, I would like to invite everyone to jump in, Natalia.
Yeah, just from our experience, it's obviously different from country to country, but you know, looking from a little bit aside, basically the interaction begins between like UNDP country offices and between the government. So all the initiatives, all the decisions are being made by the government, you know, regarding the areas where they require the support, obviously, and then depending, you know, on that, the UNDP can provide that support. But as well, it is important, as I have mentioned, that we do connect not only like that the NDC is not only a question of the ministries of environment, but it's a question of the entire government. So that as many ministries are involved in the process of its development as it's possible, and as well that they are aware on what is happening in NDC development. As well, it's good that they share the data and other information, because in that case, there is like cross connection, and then NDC becomes in the nexus rather than just some area of climate change, some environment area. So it becomes a horizontal issue, and this is what is important, you know, in making NDC successful from the very beginning and until its implementation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natalia. That's a very important thing to share. Renilde, you had, I think, your hand on. Would you like to jump in?
Yeah, thank you very much for allowing me to speak on capacity building. As I said, I'm PCCB member, and I would like to jump on the presentation made by the presenters. So, and they emphasize that capacity needs identification is really important for countries. And in that capacity building need, I want to emphasize on communication infrastructures is a weakness in some countries, and it has not said in the presentation. I want to emphasize on it regarding, for example, in this pandemic period, some countries are have weakness on communication infrastructures, and it becomes difficult to connect the network at national level, for example, or to participate in different meetings. And I would first, I would like to thank all the presenters, and would emphasize on that capacity building infrastructure weakness. And in the last, the political will, I think capacity building needs have to jump to all levels in terms of organization, in terms of coordination, and in terms of sensitization, awareness. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Renilde. Those are very important points to share as well. Anybody else?
If I may, Miriam, there are a couple of questions from the audience on the chat. Mm-hmm. The first to Omar. So it says it's from Dr. Troy. Did you guys do any capacity building with decision makers in the industry? So, for example, engineers and financial institutions such as managers. So this is the first question for Omar. There is another question for both Omar and Fam from from South Africa, from Penny. So she says, thank you for the presentation on broadening the participation. How did you decide which comments to take on board?
Thank you very much, Omar.
Sure. I think I'll take the last question first as it relates to how to decide on the comments to take on board. All right, so we had wide consultations despite the hindrances of the pandemic. We were able to host consultations via various virtual platforms between our partner entities, our consultants, and various sector experts. And we also held a stakeholder briefing and validation session before we were able to finalize the ICTU document and submit to cabinet. So, and how we chose that it would have been energy and forestry that would have been included in the update. We actually did an assessment of all the sectors based on the IPCC methodology, 2006 methodology, and based on the information that came back to us, and based on two key, I guess you could call them criterias. One criteria was there a policy commitment in this sector already in place, guiding us that we might present something reputable to the international community? That's one. Two, was the data also in place and available for us to collect and do the necessary modeling and analysis work? And if you met those two criteria at the very minimum, I think you were fortunate enough to be included in the update of the NDC. And if not, we also had documented how we can then improve on those processes to better, to include them in subsequent updates and revisions as we move towards economy-wide. And so we did the analysis, we did the assessment, and based on that, we came to the conclusion that energy and forestry were our best bet to present something reputable to the global community. Right, so we had consultations widely to include the private sector, the public sector, NGOs, CSOs, and some of those also did include financial institutions, engineers, some from the refinery, some from Ministry of Responsibility, and so on. So we did try to catch as much persons from as many areas as we could to ensure that everyone is aware and everybody understands what our commitment would have been. The first question was relating to, all right, so we have not yet done the necessary training as it relates to NDCs. That is a part of what we intend to do after we have submitted or completed our long-term strategy, because a lot of the information and the activities in the updated NDCs also related to what we're currently doing in our long-term strategy. So instead of doing two different sets of capacity exercises, we have decided to integrate both to make use of the opportunity. And for us, one of the things that we're very wary of is having our stakeholders very tired of us, because it's the same set of stakeholders that we often have to come back to get the data and information. And so what we want to have is one full session with all of those persons involved to have those capacity building exercises done for all our initiatives that we're currently doing now. I think I answered both.
Yes, thank you very much. Pham, would you like to add something?
Okay, so thank you very much for the questions. Yes, it's very important to decide which comment on board. So first, we need to get the top level of the government to be involved. That is the first thing. And then make everyone see that the NDC is a commitment of Vietnam, of Vietnam, and they have responsible for contributing what they can do with the NDC, can provide for information that we can put in our NDC. So based on the inputs from different sectors, we put in framework and then consult with them again. If that information they provide or that can be measured or can make it easily to measure in the future how it can complete. If it go along with the national priority, it go along with already adopted strategies and plan of the government or not. So with that criteria, we look and then we decide which can be involved in. And then after that, we circulate again the information and see if further input can provide. But after that, after we make wider consultation, the decision on which commitment of Vietnam should put in our NDC is a totally the role of the government. Something like we see like a forest sector in our NDC, the share of forest sector is bigger than the share in our updated NDC, because we see some part of the forest LULUCF, for example, some part the methodology is not clear, or the information we still have some discussion on that. So we leave that 1 hour NDC, update NDC. So that thing, we decide which information or which comment should put in the board for updated NDC. Back to you.
Thank you very much. That is a very important point to share as well, so we can learn from each other how to do these processes and what to consider and what not. Obviously, at the end, it's all about political decision, but that's why our inputs from the technical side need to be robust. Thank you very much, both Omar and Pham, for those excellent interventions. I don't know how much time we can go forward. We are already at the end of the event. So, quick question: can we go for 5 minutes? Fatima, Susan.
Okay. Yes, I think 5 minutes would be okay.
All right, yeah, and thank you very much to our 45 plus participants for being there and for listening this important exchange of information and knowledge and experiences and all that. I would like to give the floor briefly to Boudica, who is also engaged with some NDC work in Cambodia. So I know that he has interesting points to share with the audience. Boudica, please, you have the floor.
Okay, sorry, I'm not in a formal dress. It is midnight actually, right? So sorry for that. And no, I just want to share actually 2 things. One is actually I involved in revising the Cambodian NDCs for mitigation, all mitigation sectors, where we applied prospect plus and exact model. And in Sri Lanka also we revised the transport sector NDCs, where we applied the GASPO model. So in terms of the capacity building context, actually in Sri Lanka, actually, especially for the transport sector, we have been with the support from UNEP-DTU in particular. So the one thing actually that we understand, because very first set of NDCs, we did not have a sort of a measurable NDCs. Most of the things are very, like open area without having a proper estimation on the investment, marginal abatement cost, and without having a scientific basis. It is mostly due to the lack of, I would say also the understanding of the sectors, I mean, especially the policymakers in the respective sector. But then later actually when we were doing this in 2019 actually, we managed to build the capacities to explain them what is climate change, first thing, right? And then what is climate change and how it can impact you, and then what will be the cost in case if you do not understand the gravity of these things, and what would be the benefits for them. So a lot of capacity building were conducted, not only in this area, but mostly in the developing MRV and so on. So that helped a lot for them to understand what is NDC, why it is important to them, and then how they can benefit from them. Actually, for example, as part of the UNEP-DTU support, we developed the MAC values curves for transport sector NDCs. And most of the NDCs were measurable NDCs actually that also align with the national priorities, national policies, transport sector policies. And then I remember the Additional Secretary for Transport Sector, actually, he even presented those MAC value at the GCM, where they were explaining, okay, this is the area we want to go. I mean, that level of understanding we managed to give them actually. You know, once they get the understanding, then they get the buy-in, actually, they get the ownership of that. In Cambodia, of course, we couldn't do much capacity building because we had to do a lot of things remotely because of the COVID situation actually. But we still could explain them a little bit about the how they can apply the model and why the data are very important. And we had sort of like, I think UNDP promise was also supporting actually under the climate promise. And in Cambodia, actually, the beauty thing is actually there are a lot of partners who involved under the umbrella of NDC partnership. UNDP, World Bank, various entities were supporting for the separate sectors. And then what we did actually, we prepared the questionnaires and we sent it to the ministries, and then we had a regular conversation with the ministries, to understand exactly about the mitigation actions and what are the priority for them, and then what would be the emissions. And we were applying the two models, prospectus and exact model, and then we were feeding them the input. Okay, if you go with this one, this will be the outcome. So and so regular interaction were there. And when it comes to validation workshop, actually, they knew actually what they really wanted. And we even managed to explain a little bit on the SD impacts. I think, again, we applied the UNDP scan tool to measure the SD impact, but we didn't go for the quantitative analysis, it's mostly on the qualitative. But especially when you add this sort of element like SD, they feel a lot actually, because this is regularly they want these kind of activities. But still, of course, there are a lot to improve, but especially, utilization of this model and all those things that we still need to train a lot the local staff, but they had a very good initial understanding, right? My feeling is generally, actually, we need to first give a better understanding about climate change and its impact for all the sectors and the policymakers. Then only actually we can get the real outcome from them. Yeah. Thank you very much, and I'm really sorry for this right.
On the contrary, thank you very much for your inputs, and those are excellent lessons as well. I would like to make a summary of this interesting session, but instead of doing that, I would very much like to give the floor to Marcena to give us what she thought about this exchange of information and lessons learned and everything. How is it maybe contributing or helping to the process of the PCCB network work, and how we can continue collaborating through these events or in what other capacity with all these fantastic participants here. Before giving you the floor, I would like to mention, Susan asked me to ask you to please share your evaluation of the event, and she left the link in the chat. That's very important. Obviously, everything can be improved, but for that we need feedback and maybe suggestions on how to improve things. So thank you very much for that. Marcena, I would like you please to give us some final concluding remarks on the event, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Miriam. And I would like to thank all the speakers, and especially for the case studies, because I think that it's always very well to know the rules and how to where to go for help. But real life case studies are always encouraging and also give some food for thought. So it would be maybe good to continue along these lines in the future. As you know, we cannot organize this year our capacity building hub, but we would want to keep in touch with the members of the PCCB network through these online meetings. And of course, the challenge is to select topics that interest people, because there are so many online events compared to the beginning of the year that it is sometimes difficult, and one is jumping from an event to an event, but at the end people need to do some work as well. I think that it will be an encouraging news that I've shared already in the chat, stressing that the PCCB is working on a toolkit for national capacity, for national level capacity building assessment of gaps and needs that are connected with implementation of the Paris Agreement. And we would want to hear from as many stakeholders, parties, but also international organizations working on the implementation of the Paris Agreement, and NGOs, and also from members of the network, in order to gather as much information as possible to make this toolkit relevant, and we hope that it will, well, the work will continue for some time. It's not going to be ready this year, but we are at the moment working on the concept, and we hope that this is going to be relevant. So one of the way forward for us, and I have also other colleagues present from the PCCB here, and Renild was also taking the floor. Thank you, Renild. I think that we will want to consult you at some point and maybe organize an event around this work on toolkit once we have a version that is more ready for consultation. So again, I would like to remind you that there is going to be on the 25th capacity building event that the PCCB is organizing, and would like to invite you. And I understand that we will have the recording of this event on the website, together with all the PowerPoints which will be extremely useful. And I noted that a lot of questions that were asked in the chat box were actually answered by the presenters, and can be the PowerPoints can be used as a reference point for checking various details. So thank you, colleagues. I really enjoyed that, and I hope that we will have more of such meetings in the future. And thank you, all the participants, and also the colleagues from the Secretariat as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcena. Indeed, it's been a very, very nice session. I also enjoyed pretty much. And as I said at the beginning, this is my topic. I've been working on capacity building for almost my whole career here with the UNEP-DTU partnership. So I think the same issues persist in terms of capacity building. We still need to work with countries and stakeholders to help them to do more integrated governance processes, to integrate the NDC goals into sectoral, cross-sectoral actions, in training relevant government agency, industry, stakeholders, finance stakeholders, etc., as our participants just suggested as well. Engage and seek for inputs from subnational agencies and consult relevant stakeholders throughout the whole spectrum of, in the countries. Still review their legal and regulatory frameworks. Pretty much is said that for all fields of NDC implementation, this is a need in most countries, and obviously the monitor and progress of for reporting to the Secretariat on the advance of implementing NDCs and etc. So thank you so much to everyone for your participation, to our speakers, Omar, Fam, Natalia, Fatima, Marcena, thank you very much, and to the organizers. It's been a very fantastic event. So thank you very much. I don't know, Fatima, Susan, you would like to say some final words from my end? Thank you very much, and we are in touch. And anything you may need, we are always here for you. So just send us emails or just chat out. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I would just like to take the opportunity to thank all the participants. I see many are from Asia, and we are aware that it is really very late for many of them. So we really appreciate that people could participate and make it to the end. So thank you very much for that, and thank you to all the panelists and for their really very good input and active engagement in this event. So thank you very much. Goodbye.